Big banks have been preying on Puerto Ricans for years, selling them junk bonds and other toxic investments that the banks absolutely knew, would fail. Bankers pocketed billions of dollars and the victims lost everything. But now the tables are turning and more legal victories are being won against swindled investors. And I'm joined now by attorney Peter Mouget, one of the people who has secured a lot of those verdicts. Matter of fact, he just came back with a verdict for $19 million for this kind of scam that's going down in Puerto Rico. Peter, I followed your career a long time, and I know you've handled some of the biggest cases in the country. You have, in the last year, really been focused, actually last 2 years, but really been focused on Puerto Rico. And the reason is the people have been treated so poorly down there. I mean, tell us a little bit about what was done to make this scam unfold and how many people are affected by it.
It was a business model that the banks, investment banks like UBS, Santander, Oriental, but in this case UBS used to capitalize on underwriting investments that they knew were problematic, and they took those investments and stuffed them inside of funds and then sold them to their own clients, knowing the entire time that it was a house of cards. And they got out of it before it collapsed, protected their own interests, and passed on all the risk to their clients. It's the same story, different day.
Okay, now in this case, you're $19 million is the biggest verdict that's been
in Puerto Rico
that's been obtained.
Since 2014, since this last collapse over the last 4 or 5 years, is the biggest verdict today.
Okay, let me add to that. The people who review this are arbitrators. They're not even jurors. They're people that, for the most part, work for the industry. I mean, explain how that works. You present this to arbitrators. Who are they? They must have been really upset to give you this kind of money.
There were 3 arbitrators. 2 of them were lawyers, and the third one was not, owned her own business. But the 2 lawyers had done everything from commercial work to labor. They had, big kind of diversified careers, and they took in all the evidence. They heard 3 weeks of testimony, over 300 or 400 exhibits, and you're right. At the end, they heard the testimony at the end of the verdict, and they were pissed. They were upset.
They had to be.
I mean, it was
really
100% of the losses, attorney's fees, costs, and post-judgment interest, almost $20 million.
Okay, talk about UBS. I mean, Farron Cousins, who does this show with me, we talk about UBS all the time. We talk about their fines that I mean, year after year. Right. I don't think there's a banking organization that gets fined as much as UBS, besides Goldman Sachs and some of the other.
All of them have long lists.
Yeah, but UBS, long history of doing this kind of thing. Now you caught them in Puerto Rico. Tell us a little bit about UBS in their past history.
You can come up with one example, whether it's tax evasion, whether it's conflicts of interest. But in this case, what they did is they went to bond issuers on the island, knowing they were in trouble, and they convinced them to issue more debt to get out of their financial problems. So they issued more debt on top of more debt on top of more debt, which created this death spiral. $72 billion worth of debt by 2013. The Commonwealth couldn't pay even the interest payments, and you started to see this just implosion. And what really was disgusting about the conduct is the series of conflicts of interest. So they acted as an issuer, then they took the bonds into their proprietary accounts, and so they didn't have to hold the risk. They shoved them to their own clients into funds, and then they sold those funds to their own clients. And all the while, they reduced their exposure. UBS did. They shrunk their UBS exposure through leverage, through their proprietary accounts, and passed all of this risk onto their own clients, never telling them that there were significant problems. And actually, to the reverse, they told them everything was okay. They told them they were collateralized. They actually had a label of capital preservation in safe, telling everyone everything's okay.
Everything's good. Don't worry about it. Your money's safe. Now, we talk about these big numbers. I mean, they scammed the island for billions of dollars, okay? But the people got hit are mom and pop investors. I mean, we're not talking about banks stealing from banks. We're talking about banks stealing from mom and pop investors.
Right. And that's what, I mean, it really shakes you up.
What are some of the stories?
The stories are everything from taxi cab drivers that have been saving $50 a week their whole lives to fishermen. This one gentleman that we represented, the story makes your heart. I mean, the guy left Puerto Rico as a young man, like 6 years old, and was moved to New York, couldn't speak the language, and literally took himself from couldn't speak the language in New York at 6 or 7 years old, spent 10 years in college paying his way through, and then came back to Puerto Rico and got involved with McDonald's. And over decades saved a really good bit of money, and then took that money and gave it to UBS and said, this is my retirement. Here's a guy now in his mid-70s, about at retirement, and can you imagine, you see 70% of your net worth imploding after you were told it was safe.
Yeah, but this happened to mom and pop folks. The ugly thing about it is we hear again and again, nobody has gone to prison. Nobody's gone to prison. The DOJ has done no investigation, criminal investigation. These guys have stolen billions of dollars from mom and pop investors. It was very clear. They basically admit that if you take a look.
We've been through 15 million pages of documents. We have, our firm has 15 million pages, and have pieced together the story that we can tell in an arbitration that the arbitrators are willing to give a $20 million order. Not one phone call from a regulator or any law enforcement asking us, what have you found in that 15 million pages?
Stay at it. Keep sending the material.
Thanks.
Force them to do something. Peter Mouget, stay at this case. This is deplorable. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.